Live service gaming has been the industry's cash cow for over 10 years now, with games like Apex and Fortnite making a solid community of players that are hooked on the fact that their favorite games get constant updates in a storyline that doesn't seem to have an end. But the bright future we were hoping for with gaming as a service and what we actually ended up with are just two completely different things, with the trend being that game studios started maximizing player retention instead of focusing on actual player enjoyment, and that led to one of the biggest cases in player burnout we've ever seen. And with the live service industry shifting more towards games that just demand constant attention and making that the norm, well, competition between the studios has honestly never been more chaotic, and as a result you have a bunch of great games that pop off left and right that just end up dying almost immediately. And because of all of this, the live service gaming industry as a result is on the verge of imploding in on itself, and the worst part is that it's going to take some of your favorite games down alongside with it. Now, the idea of an always online game isn't really something new, because MMORPG games like RuneScape and World of Warcraft have been doing this for over 20 years at this point, but with the rise of online multiplayer gaming experiences and the people's need to want to interact with other players, well, the demand for gaming as a service has honestly just skyrocketed in the last few years, to the point where now you have first-person shooter live service games, you have survival games that are live service, and heck, even some single-player experiences have turned into live service, so you need to have that constant internet connection to be able to even play the game in the first place. And even though the initial promise of gaming as a service sounds like the dream scenario, because your favorite game gets updated constantly, there's an endless supply of content, and there's always something new to do. Well, what actually ended up happening is a lot more sinister than that, because game studios realized just how much money they could make by keeping you hooked on their product. And instead of looking at how to make a game into an artistic experience, they started targeting your dopamine sensors just like a drug dealer to see how they can pressure you into buying their limited time items at the item shop, or just buying random loot boxes and stuff just to make you feel like you're missing out and that you have to spend money at that moment. It turns out that having a couple of battle passes and microtransactions into your free-to-play game is actually an extremely lucrative business. And it's gotten to the point that it's been reported that 95% of all game studios are either working on or aim to release a live service game in the near future, so literally everybody's trying to make it big in this industry. But unfortunately, because of the way the live service model works, and we'll talk about just how awful that is in a moment, and just how cutthroat the competition is, what we actually ended up with is just a small selection of games that are just wildly successful, sitting on top of a mountain of dead games that could have been really great titles if they hadn't been made into live service games. So how has this shift into turning almost every game into a live service game affected the gaming industry as a whole, and just how bad are things gonna get on this downtrend before we actually start seeing a sort of like renaissance in gaming? Well, first off, we have to talk about market saturation and how there's this non-stop chase from like game studios where everybody seems to be throwing out new updates every week and new expansions, and there's new live service games coming out left and right, and it feels like everybody just wants your attention, and especially your wallet, all of the time. And you know, normally this constant feed of updates really just sounds good. You know, like I'm a big fan of RuneScape, and I love the fact that there's always something new to do in the game, and maybe if it was just like one game that was doing it, you know, that would be fine. But just the fact that every single company started doing it really just became too much, because now it just feels like you have 5 different people screaming at you nonstop, and they're all asking you to play their game, and it's not like they're asking you for a one-time purchase, which, you know, normally would be pretty easy, but no, they're asking you for your constant, ongoing attention. So live service games usually fall into 2 categories. You have the paid subscription, like RuneScape and World of Warcraft, and then you also have the free-to-play model with microtransactions, like Fortnite and Apex, you know, and that's like the main popular one that everyone seems to be doing right now. And the reason it feels like everyone's shouting at you all of the time is because their entire business model fails if they don't have a concurrent player base. So it's like a constant barrage of game developers throwing out updates and trying to pressure you into playing their game, and it's gotten so bad that now people just feel like they're stuck in a state of permanent burnout from video games, jumping from one game to the other, update to update, always chasing like a new high or new experience. And you can actually see this happening in real time, because whenever a new game comes out, they always have a massive explosion in player base, everyone's playing it, everyone's talking about it, and that lasts for maybe like a month or 2 before people just like completely forget about it and go back to their regularly scheduled games, and the game that popped off really just ends up dying almost immediately. A few examples of this that I can think off the top of my head gotta be like Splitgate, Hyperscape, Spellbreak, Realm Royale, basically any battle royale that's come out within the last 5 years. So it's an endless cycle of hype and burnout, and then hype and burnout, and it's just really not sustainable over the long term. I think it's really doing more damage than it is good for the player base. But that brings up another issue that piles on top of market saturation, and it's the fact that while the live service model has been the new gold rush in the gaming industry for like the past 5 to 10 years, and you got every developer from AAA to mom's basement trying to make it big here, the live service model actually is also completely unsustainable. Like, there's a reason why live service games like Fortnite and Apex really just don't cost anything to download and play, and it's because their success metric, their win condition here, is retaining as many players as they can inside their game, and it's not about a one-time purchase that you just pick up and play and then just put down. They want you to there constantly, ongoing, non-stop, and that means that you as a game developer need to be working non-stop on constant updates to keep up with player retention. And when there really just isn't enough players to go around, there's a pressure to always be innovating on an existing product and trying to take the same concept, which is most likely going to be a battle royale, let's be honest here, and trying to sell you the idea of a battle royale 10,000 different ways so people keep having a reason to come back to play the game. And on top of that already huge issue, you also have the fact that most live service games right now are just aiming to release as the free-to-play model, so they have to monetize with microtransactions as quickly as possible. So that means that they're releasing unfinished games in early access or in, open beta as a way of justifying shipping out a broken product ready to monetize under the mentality of, you know what, we'll just fix it later, but we just want to monetize it as early as possible, so we'll just call it early access, and we'll just let people think that they're just being involved in the development process, when in reality, we just want to monetize right away. Now let me ask you this, and leave a comment if you can think of any, but we're used to seeing broken games launch all the time, right? It's almost become the norm, it's a standard. You never buy a game day of release, and if you do, you get laughed at. But when was the last time we saw a game launch where the item shop was the broken mechanic in the game? When was the last time that a game launched and you couldn't just buy anything outright? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of studios are perfectly comfortable shipping out unplayable trash as long as the item shop is fully operational day one, And now let's take a moment to talk about the worst part of the live service gaming trend, because up to this point, everything's been pretty mild, but the most detrimental effect that we've had on the gaming industry thanks to this whole gaming as a service model, they're playing with our internal reward system. So game studios, in order to trick you into logging in more often so you can grind their slop of a game, they started implementing mechanics into their game to make sure that they reward engagement over actual enjoyment. So they started using like these psychological triggers like daily login rewards, limited time battle passes. Like, for example, they trick your brain into logging in and playing out of habit instead of actually being interested in playing the game. They just want to get you into the main menu, because once you make it to the main menu, you're like, well, I'm already here and I claim the login reward, might as well play a game or two. Because Fortnite could easily make it so that the battle pass never runs out, or like if you bought it and you don't have time to complete it before the season ends, you can just complete it on your own time, no stress, right? Well, they could do that, but then you wouldn't feel pressured to play the game as often as you do. Because if they let you enjoy the game at your own pace, that means that Epic understands that you have time to go play other games, and Epic doesn't want you to play other games, Epic wants you to play Fortnite. So they put a time limit on everything to make you feel like you don't want to miss out. You don't want to like waste your money because you already paid for the battle pass, might as well complete it. And the way the gaming industry has shifted from you gaming the game and turned it into the game gaming you has honestly just messed up people's mental health beyond belief, to the point where you're starting to see people just give up on live service games altogether, and they start picking up more story-driven single-player experiences, which, awesome. And all of that is a result of the gaming industry just literally pushing people away with their endless gameplay loop and that never seems to end. And, that's another big part of this whole thing, because these games don't really have an end. Like, do you remember beating your first video game? That weird sense of bittersweet accomplishment as the credits are rolling by and, you realize that the story is over, but you feel that sense of gratification, that sense of satisfaction that you beat the game? Like, I remember very clearly the first time I ever beat Spyro the Dragon, and that's a masterpiece of a video game, by the way. And that just does not exist in 90% of all the live service games that are out there, because they're designed to never have an end. They're never designed to give you that ginormous payoff at the very end. They're designed to give you little pieces of satisfaction so that way you're hooked on them, but you're never satisfied with them. So after the honeymoon honeymoon phase of the game being the shiny new thing is over, you kind of realize that you don't really continue playing the game because you enjoy it or you want to get somewhere, but because the game trained you into developing a habit of playing it even if you don't really enjoy it. Like, I'm just going to give you a quick example here. How many times have you heard the same people who play live service games only trash talk their game? Like, Apex Legends players hate Apex, Overwatch players hate Overwatch, Valorant players hate Valorant, and every time a new update comes out, suddenly they're just like smitten by the game. Like, this is the greatest game that's ever come out, this is the best Fortnite season yet, and then just 2 weeks later they go back to hating the game all over again. That's because they're constantly in the cycle, they're stuck in that loop. Now, in contrast to that, how many people have you heard trash talking Hollow Knight or any other single player experience? Not that many, to be honest. People really stopped enjoying live service games a long time ago, and the reason a lot of them still play them is because they got tricked into thinking that they still enjoy the games. And that has led to the biggest case of video game burnout we've ever seen in gaming. And in my opinion, it's only going to get worse before it gets better. Like, there's already been a trend of live service games that pop off in record numbers that just die in less than 2 years. And a lot of them are just gone forever. They're shut down, there's no way to play them, and all that time and effort that developers put into making their vision a reality is just, it's gone down the drain. And people are already starting to get tired of the battle pass gimmick, and we've actually started seeing a sudden spike in more indie and single player games popping up left and right, which is great, you know, because we're starting to see a resurgence in games that focus more on story and actual complete experiences instead of just trying to sell you a surface level shallow game with an endless gameplay loop. But unfortunately, the damage has already been done. There's people who are legitimately addicted to hot dropping in Apex Legends every single game to the point that they don't even care about winning anymore. They just want to hot drop and die, hot drop, die, maybe get like 5 kills, and once they have those 5 kills, they have that surge of dopamine just for them to die immediately and, you know, start the cycle all over again. But people really are just severely burnt out, and half of them don't even really know it. But yeah, that's all I really want to talk about with you guys, so thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.